All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rock Solid News. We got a great one for you this evening. Uh, Today it is November the 14th. It is a Tuesday, and we will be right back after this very short intro. Join us back here live in about a minute and a half.
So, the high school drama teacher over here accuses others of liking the sounds of their own voices.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was a high school teacher before getting into politics, and I'm having a little trouble remembering what exactly the job that the Leader of the Opposition had before getting into politics.
Yes, and he left right in the middle of the semester, and I'm having trouble remembering why.
The small fringe minority who are holding unacceptable views do not represent the views of Canadians whose beds are filled with people who chose not to get vaccinated. The risk posed to all of us by unvaccinated people, it's never too late to do the right thing. We'll be immensely pleased to be able to give you that first dose of vaccine.
I'd like to welcome the fake news media,
and the ideology in order to push particular agendas. And I think some of those agendas, unfortunately, pretty hardcore, pretty extreme. The power of misinformation, because so much, of what we hear coming from these protesters from, a scientific perspective just isn't true. And
can you state categorically? You are fake news.
Sir.
You are fake news. Welcome, Rock Solid News. It is Tuesday, as I mentioned, November the 14th, and we do have a fantastic one for you this evening. Nikki Hurley says, when are the people going to wake up? Green Day says when September ends. Maybe that's next September. We'll have to tune in and find out. Don't hold your breath, Nikki. So welcome all. Rock Solid News. My name is Newfoundland, as you can see down in the corner. For those of you who are new here, that is my online moniker, which means that I'm from Newfoundland. That wasn't really a riddle. All right, let's get underway. Today's date, beware of those beating the war drum. Focus on home. There's a lot to unpack in the title, and we also have the thumbnail for today, which, where has it gone to now? The thumbnail for today here, as you can see, the Canadian military veteran who criticized COVID-19 vaccine mandate pleads guilty. Now, it's important not to get your panties in a knot right away about him pleading guilty. He pled guilty to a crime that he did, in fact, commit. And he knows he did. He did that on purpose to make a point. He pled not guilty to some of the other charges, and those charges were dropped. So before you get too concerned, yes, he did plead guilty. He pled guilty to charges. This is James Topp we're talking about, the Canadian veteran who marched across Canada trying to raise awareness for the, how do we put it? The dictatorship-like vaccine mandates. So he did plead guilty. Here you can see. But again, he pled not guilty and got other charges dropped, ones that were, more bogus than the others. And the ones that he did commit, he committed basically purposely to raise awareness and to make a point. So don't worry about that. Now, back to the title, The War Drum. It's important before we dismiss the war drum and start talking about home, it's important for us to fully understand what the war drum is. And I know a lot of you guys, I may seem like I'm preaching to the choir here, but we say this kind of stuff on this stream in hopes that other people will hear this somehow. If it gets shared out to other timelines, then other people hear it and they start hearing it. And this is stuff that Canadians need to hear. The current war drum that's being beat, you can hear it on the daily news, boom, 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 is Israel. Israel right now is the cash cow for the foreign war, the mass killing, and they're the focus of Western, whatever we say. He was guilty of not following orders. I don't know who you're talking about there, Stonely. You're going to have to be more specific. So the current cash cow is Israel, obviously. An average of 429 Palestinians a day are being murdered by the IDF, all because a couple of Arabs on hang gliders flew over the wall. There was a UN vote to condemn. Yes, James Todd. Oh, that's who he's talking about. Okay, yes, he was guilty of not following orders. Yeah, basically, and he didn't follow the orders purposely to make the point. So, yeah. So there was a UN vote to condemn Israel's current genocide of the Palestinian people, and 6 countries decided they could not support that. Six nations. Canada and the United States and Israel were of those 6, if you can believe it. 15 countries abstained from voting, which is basically voting against it. You're just too cowardly to actually say no. And then 100 and some odd other countries voted yes, because of course, normal, non-psychopathic people condemn genocide. That's usually a pretty easy one to. Yeah, and I'll take the heat for that one. I am a little slow, not on my game, especially not today here, Mr. Stonely. So, if you're keeping track, Canada couldn't find it within its moral gumption to condemn a genocide, like an act of genocide. Now, this is the current war drum. Israel, Palestine, right? Funding, money, where's it going? It's not going to Canada, God forbid. Canadian money couldn't possibly stay here in Canada. So where's it going? Israel, currently. But formerly, and not so long ago, many of you were old enough to remember Ukraine, which was maybe 6 months ago. I'm not that great with my timeline here. Again, as Stonely pointed out, I'm slow, but Ukraine. In Canada, just Canadian alone, $14 billion plus funding, Canadian, your taxpayer dollars, has gone to Ukraine. 14, let's make sure the microphone is working, billion, 14 billion Canadian dollars have been used to fund a proxy war in Ukraine versus Russia. That's just from Canada alone. Now you think of how many billions internationally from the United States went to Ukraine. No, Elizabeth, I don't off the top of my head. I do have an article regarding that we were going to pull up, and it may be mentioned, possibly. And if somebody does know it or find it out, put it in the comments. I'll pop it up on screen here. But the question is, do you know who the Canadian UN candidate was, the delegate there that actually made the vote? Because we say Canada voted against it. Canada as a nation didn't vote against it. Obviously, it was an appointed bureaucrat. So, yes, and Nikki, sick of it, I can only assume you're talking about $14 billion of Canadian taxpayer money. And remember, the veterans like James Topp and others, remember how they were asking for too much money. Just remember that. Wherever you are in Canada, and if you're in the States, this will apply to you, just, change the geography a bit. But wherever you are in Canada, look at your homeless problem. Look at your healthcare problem. and look at your employment problem and ask yourself what $14 billion of your hard-earned, worked-for taxpayer money is doing funding a proxy war in Ukraine. And that's Ukraine alone. Now, we have the current cash cow is Israel. We have the former cash cow of Ukraine. But Stonely, your comment here is perfectly timed with my transition point out of here. It's currently Israel. It was formerly the Ukraine. But all you need to do is go back to the war before that, and the war before that, and the war before that, and the war before that. Every single war, guys. Just start with Israel, go to Ukraine, go back to Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria, go back to Vietnam, go back to Korea. Guys, every single war is just banker wars. Every European war that you've ever heard of or studied about has been a banker war for profit, wherein financiers have financed both sides of war. This is not, dark web Reddit conspiracy stuff. This is mainstream accepted history that many, many people, including the Prescotts and the Bushes here for the Second World War, were funding both sides. And I should correct myself. That's the First World War I'm talking about, I believe. So every war since our history began, we'll say, because we don't even know when that is, has been funded by the same people on both sides. It's for profit. It always has been. And it currently is right now. Look at Ukraine. Find out how many billions have gone into that. And ask yourself if any of that's accounted for. Keep in mind, we had weapons that were donated or provided for by the Western world that ended up in Mexico in the hands of Mexican cartels. Mexican cartel members had American and American weapons in their hands that were meant for the Ukrainian army to fund it, to fight this apparent proxy war against Russia. And yes, Tobin, in reference to European wars, brother wars, absolutely. Or if you want to be very literal, cousin wars. Like England and Germany fighting against each other is literal cousins sending their civilians to slaughter each other. That's what that is. And this is my point, yes. Where that billions of dollars actually go. How much of that money is old Zelensky putting up his nostrils with him and his generals? We can leave it at that. 14 billion Canadian dollars have gone into Ukraine alone. Okay, now think about how much money was sunk into the Iraq, Afghanistan, just debauchery, Libya, and Syria. Think about how many Syrian refugees we have in Canada. Why is that? Because, as Elizabeth rightly pointed out, we start wars, and then wars create refugees, and refugees need to be provided for. And guess who provides for them? We do. And if you doubt that, here's a very quick video to show you. And I need to make sure you understand. This is not in Iran, what I'm about to show you. This is Bay Street in Toronto.
It's happening in Toronto, Canada, Bay and Wellington.
And yes, in case you were curious, that is hundreds, if not thousands, of Muslims on the middle of the street in Bay Street in Toronto, shouting, "God is great," as they kneel in prayer. Again, not the streets of Iran. I love you too, Elizabeth. We all look the same. Everybody looks the same because we're all human. You know who the enemy is? The person that tells you to hate other people. Because here's the thing. I don't have a problem with Muslims in this country. That doesn't bother me at all. Most Canadians will consider themselves Christian to some degree. And a lot of you should understand something about Islam. Islam has a profound respect for Christians and for Jesus Christ and for his mother, Mother Mary. So, you know, if you're going to fear migrants, there are some migrants that are counter to your culture. And I'm not saying Muslims aren't, but there are other kinds of immigrants that are counter to your culture. But what I just showed you is also counter to your culture. So as Canadians, the last part of this episode is called Focus on Home, because as we are distracted with these banker wars, the money currently going to Israel to support more murder and genocide and killing, as we send billions and billions to Ukraine, which is now 14 billion to Ukraine. This is what's happening at home in Toronto.
It's happening in Toronto, Canada, Bay, and Wellington.
Allahu Akbar. So God is great. And just think about it, that's how cohesive other ethnicities are versus us whitewashed Anglo-Saxon Europeans. They're in a foreign country, and look how cohesive they are. They can take over downtown Toronto with prayer. Can you fathom hundreds or 1,000 white Canadians in Pakistan shutting down Islamabad or wherever in order to have prayer for Jesus in the middle of the street? Obviously, it would never happen. You'd be beheaded. But anyways, that's the war drum that I'm referencing. Beware those beating the war drum. You don't have to actively support war in order to beat the war drum either. When you're sharing memes saying stand with Israel, or conversely, when you're sharing memes saying from river to sea Palestine will be free, you are using your spiritual and public energy to support one side or the other, which is literally one side or the other is just kill the other side. There is no good God. There is no righteous one. The righteous way to approach foreign conflicts, foreign is your key hint. If it's a foreign conflict, it's foreign. It's not domestic. That means look away. It does not involve you. It does not tangibly affect you. And all you're going to do is support one side or the other, which means you're going to support killing. If it's a domestic war, it deserves your attention. Or threat of domestic war, it deserves your attention. So now that we've kind of seen what the war drum is and how it's been operating since the dawn of time, what's it distracting us from? Because I said, beware of those beating the war drum. Focus on home. Well, there's a reason to focus on home. What's happening at home that deserves our focus? Let's see. I'm just getting caught up on some of these comments here. Tobin is lighting it up. I'm not. Yeah, here we go. I'm not racist. I hate everyone the same. Excellent. So what's it distracting us from? What's happening at home here in Canada that we're being distracted from by wanting to support these foreign banker wars? Let's see. Well, everybody knows the taxes are being raised. I mean, we're paying more taxes and creating new taxes. We have carbon taxes and CO2 taxes and rebates on this tax because I applied this tax federally but not provincially. We're having citizens that are opposing the government being prosecuted. Many of you know James Topp on screen here. Some of you may know the name Jeremy McKenzie. Some of you may know the name Dana Metcalf. These are citizens who stood in opposition to the government and are now being prosecuted by that same government. You're losing made-up rights, yes. What else is happening at home? Well, mass immigration. Imagine you live in a country where so much immigration has occurred that you're now the visible minority. And people will say, well, that makes you racist. Well, why don't we replace the people of Pakistan with white people? Why don't we go into Egypt and say that the good people of the state of Florida deserve this land, and we're now going to just bring them all over here, and you guys need to deal with it because it's now going to be a neo-Western Christian nation, not a Coptic Christian / Muslim nation that it is now. That's a preposterous idea. Nobody would ever want to do that. So why does it want to be done to our nations? There's no statable reason for you to flood a nation with a conglomerate of ethnicities that don't agree with each other, let alone with the new land that they're being brought to. Community cohesiveness is absolutely required, or else you turn into Vancouver, where a dad and a father just got shot in a drive-by shooting that was gang-related, or in Manitoba, or in Toronto, or in Montreal, where drive-by shootings occur far more often than you're ever told in the city of Montreal, La Belle Ville. Canadian cities are being turned into cesspools, and you're barely able to escape it in the rural areas now. Even in little old Newfoundland, even in the rural areas, as Geraldine can probably attest to since she's seen that with her own eyes now, you can't escape it. When you see cities littered with violence, were those cities littered with gun violence and gang violence from the native Anglo-Saxon population? No, there's obvious crime. Nobody's perfect. And it's not to blame one ethnicity or another. The point is, when you take ethnicities that don't agree with each other, and they exist all over the world, any Asian country, just pick one and then pick another, they hate each other for absolutely no reason. Take the nation of India and then take somebody from the north and take somebody from the south, they hate each other just because of skin tone. Pick literally any African country and then pick any other African country, and guess what? You guessed it, they hate each other. So it's not like racism is this white Anglo-Saxon problem. Racism has been in existence since the dawn of time. It's called tribalism, and it's how tribes actually flourished and didn't die. So they have community cohesiveness, and that's what you need. And in order to keep your community safe. But if you don't have that, guess what happens? Look at any Canadian city. That's what happens. Absolutely no community cohesiveness. And yeah. So we've got mass immigration. We've got creating new taxes, raising existing taxes. You're persecuting citizens in Canada. Remember, you've got James Topp, Jeremy McKenzie, Dana Metcalf. These are just three off the top of my head that have been charged by the sitting government. And yeah, we can defund the cabal, which is, the CBC, the government, the WEF, the WHO, the UN, whoever it is. What else is happening at home? Well, the Canadian dollar and the US dollar, because they are quote unquote tied together, they're declining. Why are they declining? Well, there's a new world order. We've got BRICS, BRICS Plus, and they're likely to be, well, they already trade the Coots boys. Yes, Nikki, thank you. I knew there was another one off the top of my head. There's Coots boys in jail right now, still. So, yeah, the Canadian US dollar, that's declining. We've got a new world order. The biggest countries in the world with the biggest populations and the largest GDPs are now not trading in the US dollar. They're trading in their own currencies, and they're likely to create their own currency very soon. And then that will be used for international trade by them, and the US dollar will decline even more, which means the Canadian dollar goes down with it. What about CPP? How do you feel about that pension, Mr. Nikki Hurley, Mr. Stone Lee, Elizabeth? Troy's in here, I think, unless it looks like he got connected. Yeah, what about that? My father is about to draw his pension in about 3 or 4 years. It's probably not going to be available by then. Your CPP has been in danger forever, and continues to be in danger. Our entire nation is going broke. And why do you suppose that is? Well, something else that's happening at home that we have a quick little video for you is the Arrive Can app. There's now a RCMP investigation as well as a parliamentary investigation into the Arrive Can app and the contractors that have been hired and paid millions of dollars to provide a very seemingly simple app that has been shrouded in fraud, secrecy, and failure since its launching. So let's check this out. This is a parliamentary committee. This is a elected elitist nonsense. And this is a 5-minute clip that we're not going to play the whole 5 minutes, so don't worry, but just soak in the first minute and just listen to what's being asked, and see if you don't feel like your intelligence is being insulted.
Mr. Yao, you represent a two-person company that receives contracts and then subcontracts, and you've received millions of dollars from taxpayers for the process of receiving contracts and then subcontracting. So what would you say you do here?
Chair and honorable member, you speak about what do I do, but I have to go back to the beginning. The amount of effort
I think you do. I'm not looking for prevarication or distraction. What is it that you do for the government of Canada in exchange for millions of dollars?
I don't know if it's exchange for millions of dollars, because there's so much overhead to running a bricks and mortars business here in Ottawa, expenses relating to Indigenous employees that I have, Indigenous consultants.
So you don't have employees. There's two of you who are partners.
I do. Yeah, and they're Indigenous.
You have two employees. That's what you told the committee earlier.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
What is it that you do?
What is it that I do? I manage.
What does your company do?
Well, it's a kind of so you're asking two things there, right? The aspect of what I do is an executive.
So I'll give you a quick spoiler alert. He doesn't answer the question. He dances around it. It's like the old adage when if you ask a politician what time it is, a good politician will tell you how to build a watch instead of telling you what time it is. So back at home, we have a investigation into the Arrive Can app, which was meant to screen people coming into Canada during COVID. $54 million went into, so far, paying this man that you just saw on screen and his business partner and one employee that they hired for like months of work. Now, the interesting thing is that the last invoice that they billed the government was in October of 2023. It's now November 14th. So less than a month ago, they were still billing the federal government for monies owed to them for the ArriveCAN app. For what? God only knows. Because the questions didn't get answered in the parliamentary committee. And yes, as you say, LOL, what is it that you do? And no, we don't need a big long answer. I'm just asking, what is it that you do? Like on a day-to-day basis, what do you physically do when you wake up that you're billing for millions of dollars? I doubt he does laundry. I would assume he pays somebody to do that. I saw a good comment up here from Troy Moore. Didn't they just announce UBI in Newfoundland? This is a bit of a problem. It's no, they didn't, and kind of yes, they did, but no, they didn't. Likely this stems from the TikTok that have been getting sent to me by people who wanted me to talk about it. This is the problem. They didn't hit play on the TikTok. They read the headline on the TikTok and then shared it to everyone and then moved on. It's a pilot program for seniors right now. So what they're doing is they're taking a select group of seniors aged 60 to 64 and changing the benefits provincially that they get to match with the federal average that of all the provinces, because we are on the lower end of our benefits that we pay our seniors on from the provincial side. So that's what they're doing. It's a pilot program for seniors ages 60 to 64, where a select group is going to get bumped up the amount of benefits they get. And I don't know. They're going to see if that works. I don't know. I don't know what the point of it is, but it's an announcement given we're heading into an election season. So do with that what you will. Yeah, exactly. All right. So we are over the 30-minute mark, which is normally where I like to end things here. But just as a quick recap, guys, it doesn't matter if it's the Israeli war that's happening right now. It doesn't matter if we go back to caring about Ukraine and Russia and that proxy war, that's another banker war. It doesn't matter, guys. If it's a foreign conflict, here's your base rule. And this just applies as a blanket rule. If it's a foreign war, it should be foreign to you. Okay? If it's a foreign war, you don't need to support. You don't need to proclaim who you believe to be the good guy and the bad guy. Believe it or not, when it involves killing, there's no good people, regardless. Even in self-defense, it's not a good thing to kill. I'm not saying it's not acceptable, but just understand that killing is never good. There's never a good side when there are two parties killing each other. So when possible, which means in a foreign conflict that has nothing to do with you, stay out of it. Focus on home. What's happening here? We're about to go into an election season. We can't even share news on Facebook. These are the things that we need to care about as Canadians. And then even more introspectively as a provincial affiliate. Focus on home. Absolutely, Geraldine. And this doesn't even have to apply for war only. This can apply for basically foreign policy, guys. Your foreign policy should be, we don't care. We have domestic policy. End of story. We have veterans, we have sick people, we have homeless people, we have families, we have single mothers, fathers, parents. Everyone in this country is struggling. Even the people that should be better off in a normal situation are struggling. That's not a good sign. We are in the late stages of capitalism collapsing. We're watching it happen as the Eastern world takes power back. You may as well start focusing on what's happening here. That's a great way to end it for me. So thank you for tuning in, guys. Tuesday, November 14th. It's been a fantastic one. The Rumble chat has been fantastic, and the Facebook chat and YouTube chat over here, guys. Thank you as always. That'll be it for me. So you people, you stay sovereign, okay?